every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing by. Shine, flies, be patient, 'cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
Protests and anthems, yes, we chanting. A movement of people, it's like we dancing to the ministry of. It's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the powers even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the poor and where the business.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, your host and White House correspondent. I still got my press pass. I'm in touch, and so you be in touch. Be sure to follow me on all the socials at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and I pop right on up fresh for you to follow. Also, be sure to download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or just tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580, and there we are for your listening pleasure. Last but not least, subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. That way you'll never miss an episode. A busy news day. We'll get to headlines in just a moment, but just a friendly reminder, if you haven't already, you got to go to the KBLA1580.com website to register for free for the Left Coast Forum. It is fast approaching. It's happening here in LA at LA Trade Tech on October 25th. Be there or be square. We have some really phenomenal keynotes, including Dr. Cornel West and Richard Wolff. But we also have a number of leaders on the front lines that are going to convene there, organizers that are doing their thing. If you're looking for an opportunity to tap in to the work that is afoot, this is the place to be. This is the place to be. And so go to KBLA1580.com to register for free today, and I can't wait to see you there. All right. In our second hour, you don't want to miss my conversation with singer-songwriter Macy Gray. We talked about a whole number of things, including how she's mourning the passing of D'Angelo, but in this first hour, you don't want to miss my conversation with Darren Harris, the Chief Government and Community Affairs Officer over at St. John's Community Health. Also, Jim Mangia. He's the President and CEO of St. John's Community Health. They're one of the partners, one of those leaders on the front lines I was just talking about. They're going to be at the Left Coast Forum. Talk about commitment to the work. You don't want to miss my conversation with them, talking about how they are defending our right to healthcare, quality healthcare, how they're defending the role that community health centers play in keeping us all healthy. And so that's all coming up. But now it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. And kicking us off, NBC News is reporting that a judge has blocked Trump's layoffs during the shutdown, calling them illegal. A federal judge today granted a temporary restraining order blocking the Trump administration from laying off federal workers during the government shutdown, which has now stretched into 2 weeks. Two unions sued the Trump administration just last month ahead of the shutdown after the White House signaled a plan to lay off workers through reduction in force at federal agencies. Well, at a hearing today, a federal judge in the Northern District of California granted the union's motion to issue a temporary restraining order preventing the layoffs, which began on Friday. And in other court news, all eyes on the U.S. Supreme Court today. The Supreme Court leaning towards further weakening the landmark Voting Rights Act. Yeah, as in the Voting Rights Act, that if your grandparents were like my grandparents who didn't vote for the first time until they were in their 40s because they didn't have the right to, you ought to lean in and listen to this one. The conservative majority Supreme Court. Let's just put this squarely at their feet. The conservative majority Supreme Court today appeared open to again undermining the Voting Rights Act in a congressional redistricting case from Louisiana, who expanded the scope of the case over the summer, heard oral arguments about whether states can ever consider race in drawing new districts while seeking to comply with Section 2 of the 1965 law, which was enacted to protect minority voters against a backdrop of historic racial discrimination. The Voting Rights Act has long been a target of conservative legal attacks, with the Supreme Court weakening it in two major rulings in 2013 and 2021. The longest running dispute concerns the congressional map in Louisiana, which was required to redraw last year after it was sued under the Voting Rights Act to ensure there were two majority Black districts. Now, the original map had only one such district in the state where a third of the population is Black. And so all eyes on this case. A little bit later, we're going to share with you just a little bit of the oral arguments from that case, just because this is so important. The show is called A More Perfect Union, taken straight out of our Constitution. And so constitutional issues, we are like a heat missile. We're paying extra close attention to this case, as we should. When we come forward, you don't want to miss my conversation with the dynamic duo leading the team at St. John's Community Health, our partners in the Left Coast Forum. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Preparation, purpose, and passion fuel greatness. Join Brandon Copeland as he shares his journey from a professional football player to real estate investor, professor, and mentor committed in protecting one's wealth on and off the field. See how he turned his experiences and lessons learned into legacy. Discover life-changing plays, moves that build the future, and the importance of financial literacy to protect what matters. Catch the two-part series at casheslife.com/double impact. Brought to you by Nationwide.
It's been said that when someone you love has Parkinson's, you have Parkinson's.
The Parkinson's Foundation knows that the disease doesn't just affect the diagnosed. It affects everyone who supports and helps care for them.
If you have questions, the Parkinson's Foundation has answers.
We can help you understand the disease
and give you tips for living a better life.
Find your answers at parkinson.org or call 1-800-473-4636. The Parkinson's Foundation. Better lives together.
Tavis Smiley with a final word here about the upcoming Left Coast Forum on Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. As you know by now, our major keynoters include Professor Richard Wolff and Dr. Cornel West. LA Mayor Karen Bass will be there as well. But listen to some of these plenaries: fighting for Black students and educational equity, resilience under Trumpism, how to stay sane under fascism, the battle for democracy, what's at stake in 2026, healthcare under attack, fighting Trump's cuts, and building patient power from seed to system, building a local food economy in South LA, theater as a force for change, voices from Palestine. The Constitution is not self-reinforcing, racism on the left, building communities of care, federal changes and their impact on healthcare in LA County, Committee for the First Amendment, and more. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. We'll see you there.
Hit me! National News, The Consequence. Informed opinion. And analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and it's always great to welcome folks back to A More Perfect Union because it doesn't get more perfect with just a single conversation. It's a series of conversations with folks who are well aware that the ideas that they hold could very well shape the future. St. John's Community Health knows a little bit about that. I'm really delighted to welcome back to the show Jim Manja. He is the president and CEO of St. John's Community Health, and also Darren Harris, who is the chief government and community affairs officer for St. John's Community Health. Welcome back to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks so much. Hello, how are you doing?
Doing well. Well, first things first, one of the biggest headlines that's trending right now is this government shutdown. We're now in the second week of this government shutdown with no sight of it letting up anytime soon. Talk to us about how community health centers like yours are being impacted, not just here in California, but what are you hearing from other community health centers across the country, Jim?
So I think that obviously this shutdown is really about making sure that our patients continue to receive the subsidies they need to purchase insurance on the exchange and to prevent the cuts to Medi-Cal and Medicaid. So we understand and we're supportive that Democratic leadership in Congress has decided to fight on the issue of healthcare because it directly impacts St. John's and our patients. I think that the government shutdown will impact us significantly. First, we won't be able to draw down on our federal grants. Secondly, eventually, the federal government will stop issuing payments for Medicaid to California to pay for Medi-Cal services. So there's a significant threat. But I think the bigger threat is that millions and millions of Americans and millions of Californians will lose their health coverage if this shutdown does not result in peeling back some of the cuts that Congress and Trump have initiated.
I mean, it sounds dire because it is. Darren, I know that you work very closely with folks on the front lines. Talk to us about what you're hearing, particularly in South LA, what you're hearing in San Bernardino County, what you're hearing in Indio. Talk to us about the impacts that you're hearing that may not be breaking through the news cycle.
Well, I'm so glad that you asked that question. I'm currently in San Bernardino, where I was meeting with folks about how the government shutdown is impacting them right now. And so St. John's is, remaining whole as far as we're continuing to provide the services that we provide for our patients. But our patients are worried. Mothers are worried about will they receive the type of support through WIC, to feed their children. Folks are afraid of housing security, with this government shutdown. And so it's really an attack on the most vulnerable folks with all the different social determinants of health, whether that might be health, education, food, as I mentioned before. And so folks are worried and the clock is ticking.
The clock is ticking indeed. And Jim, for folks who are reliant on that social safety net, where that is the lifeline, there's no, massive savings that they're tapping into. There's no 401k that they're drawing down from. For a lot of our fellow Americans, for a lot of our neighbors and friends, this is it. This is the lifeline. And so talk to us about how prepared is St. John's Community Health? How prepared are your sister community health centers across the country to be able to weather this shutdown for more than just a couple weeks?
Well, I think St. John's is, very stable and significant and large organization. And I think we have the capacity to weather this for a few months. I think other community health centers don't have as much capacity to do that. But again, we can do this for a couple months, 3 months. And then we're starting to become alarmed. So I think a lot of community health centers are going to shutter if this shutdown doesn't resolve soon. I think a lot are going to start cutting services and closing sites. So it's obviously a very, very serious situation. But again, the cuts that we're fighting by supporting the shutdown would have an even more devastating impact on our patients.
And speaking of cuts, again, last time you all joined us right here on A More Perfect Union, you were talking about your Medicaid campaign, a campaign to protect the vulnerable who rely on Medicaid. In California, we call it Medi-Cal. People who rely on that as a lifeline. We know that since the last time we spoke, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill passed and has been signed into law, representing one of the biggest cuts to healthcare in American history, nearly $900 billion in cuts to Medicaid alone. Talk to us about that campaign. It wasn't necessarily about preventing those cuts from happening. We knew the Republicans had the votes to make it happen. But talk to us about what your Medicaid campaign was all about, and some of the lessons and growth opportunities that movement leaders can glean from that. Jim?
So I think the campaign was successful in that we began to build relationships and coalitions around the country. So we convened a group of providers, hospital association, and others in Nebraska, for example. We work closely with Medicaid Matters New York. So there were some real relationships that got forged as a result of us kind of playing on the national scene. I think what we tried to do was influence the more vulnerable Republicans, 6 of them, to vote against the bill, and we were not successful in getting any of them because of the pressure that was coming from Trump. But I think we did learn what the pressure points were. I think we did learn what the vulnerabilities were in that bill that could be built on and expanded on to build more coalition and to build fight back. But I think we learned that the Republicans are working in lockstep, and they're determined to destroy the safety net in the United States. And they're determined to cut back on all of the funding, the grant funding and the support that allowed us to build homeless healthcare, street medicine, Black maternal health, immigrant health. I mean, all those programs are on the chopping block. And so now we have to continue that fight on the local and state level.
And speaking of the state and local level, Darren, talk to us about some of the lessons that you gleaned with leaders in the field, talking to leaders in the field, many of which you feel very disenchanted. Many of them feel very hopeless and not hopeful about the future because, progressives didn't win that fight.
Well, I mean, this is just an ongoing fight that we have in DC and across our country. I mean, for the last 15 years, folks have been trying to repeal healthcare for folks who need it most. And so they've been picking away at that, at every single Congress. And this has probably been one of the biggest blows to healthcare that we have seen in recent, history, especially because we were making so many improvements on healthcare. And so although we didn't receive the type of outcome that we wanted, as Jim mentioned, we did identify some of the pressure points in identifying where we can probably move the needle on a few of these things. And so As you can see, there's just so much that's happening in DC, as we speak, and DC has been so unreliable, not just with HR1, but we see that now with the shutdown, and we just cannot continue to let some of the folks who need healthcare most continue to hurt, not under our watch. And so you see folks taking some significant leadership here in states like California, to where we know that we may have to identify some kind of way to kind of fill in the gaps, to stop some of the pain for just a moment until DC gets itself together.
I mean, it sounds like my shorthand, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Is that the word, Jim? Can we expect for things to get worse before they get better? And what does getting better look like, particularly in California, where we know we have, a Democratic governor that believes in and invests in community health? We know we have a Democratic supermajority in the California state legislature that's prepared to protect and defend community health. And so talk to us about the ways in which California has a bit more going for us in the name of protecting community health compared to community health centers in rural America, in the South, and in places that don't have that kind of political support.
Well, we don't currently have that political support in California. The governor's budget, which was approved by the legislature, made deeper cuts to Medi-Cal than the Trump administration, basically eliminating Medi-Cal for immigrant families and workers, eliminating dental services for health, for Medi-Cal expansion patients. The legislature postponed many of those cuts, thank goodness. And obviously that gives us more time to organize and push back. But the governor has not been supportive of community health centers in general, but particularly in this last period, because the only thing that will prevent California from making the kind of cuts that the Trump administration wants it to make is if it raises revenue, if it increases taxes. And it could easily increase taxes. More billionaires live in California than anywhere in the country. So they could easily raise taxes on the rich to pay for all of the social programs and health programs that are so vital to the communities that we serve. But the governor's running for president, and he does not want to be classified as, increasing taxes at this time. And so we're in an uphill battle in California to prevent the kinds of cuts that are both fostered by HR1 and the federal government, but also fostered by the governor's budget, which made drastic cuts to healthcare for the poor.
But just, Jim, as a follow-up, I haven't seen the most recent polling. What I've seen polling in recent months has suggested that Californians aren't interested in raising taxes at all. I mean, even a number of local ballot measures in some cases have a little bit of an uphill battle. And so in what ways is the governor's position the supermajority of Democrats in the state legislature? In what ways are there sort of no new taxes stance? In what ways is that really reflective of the public sentiment among Californians?
Well, I think that's a good point. But of course, there isn't a campaign to change that sentiment, right? So if you say to people as they start feeling these healthcare cuts, hey, California gives more money to the federal government than we get back, and we need to insulate ourselves from these devastating cuts to your healthcare. I mean, we're doing it on Prop 50, which I completely support. We're engaging in the fight against Trump on the political front. But what are we doing on the policy front? How are we making sure that the policy implications and the policy decisions that we're making are not hurting the very people that we say we want to protect from the immigration raids and from the attacks on DEI and so on from the Trump administration? But when you're making those cuts, and I understand numbers are numbers, but budgets reflect priorities. And so what is the governor's priority if he's making significant cuts, more significant than Trump's cuts to Medi-Cal.
Darren, I want you to weigh in on the politics of this. Jim has really laid out, sort of the policy piece of this and the sort of landscape analysis. But talk to us about the politics of this. We know the governor, to Jim's point, seems to be doing all the things that a would-be presidential candidate would do. Talk to us about how that makes your job as Chief Government and Community Affairs Officer for St. John's Community Health. How does that make your job a little bit easier? How does it make your job a bit more difficult also?
I mean, what we can do is we can tap in the power of Prop 50. I mean, California is leading, understanding that the pieces in the puzzle box have been shuffled. And so the rules that we have played by in the past are just not useful right now. And so we have to do something bold. We have to be courageous. We have to do something that's right in order to save democracy. And so, folks are really, giving their kudos to the governor and to the legislature to step up in Prop 50 and really build it on that California is ready to lead. We understand, what's at stake in DC and what we can lose here in our state because we give so much. And because we value so much of our social services here, we understand that we can't let the president and his administration run unchecked because it's clear that Congress, has forgot, what their job is. However, even if that is to pass, Prop 50, we're talking about taking back the House in 2026 and then trying to repair, some of the cuts and attacks that have happened over the course of this the last few months. And so what we're weighing in with the local solution is how can we use the momentum of Prop 50, given that California is ready to lead, to fix some of the policy issues here, locally, whether that might be, healthcare, food, housing, there's sundry different things that folks are focusing on.
When we come forward more with Jim Manja and Darren Harris of St. John's Community Health, we're going to be switching gears and talking about their message to movement builders right now.
He's breaking boundaries, amplifying diverse perspectives, and tackling the issues that matter most to you. You're inside A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey on KBLA Talk 1580.
They're participating in the Left Coast Forum, which will be happening October 20th. And we come forward more with Jim Manja and Darren Harris of St. John's Community Health. We're going to be switching gears and talking about their message to movement
second majority black district, but the state's attorney general says the Voting Rights Act's ban on racial discrimination and redistricting is unconstitutional. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams may endorse Andrew Cuomo for mayor. Adams says he's still deciding who to back, but made it clear he does not want frontrunners Ram Mamdani in office. The world is continuing to mourn R&B legend D'Angelo, who passed away Tuesday at 51 after a battle with cancer. A pioneer of neo-soul, he had 2 albums named among Rolling Stone's best ever. Stars like John Legend, Jamie Foxx, Jennifer Hudson, Maxwell, and Jill Scott praised his genius and lasting impact on music. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
North Hollywood, watch out for a crash on the 170 northbound before Sherman Way that's blocking a couple of lanes. It looks like it's the 2 right lanes, and that drive is going to be tough away from Oxnard Street. I just received word the right lane is blocked and the carpool lane is blocked, so watch out. We're also heading out to the drive in Pasadena, top east 210, leaving the 134 all the way towards Foothill, and westbound slowing out of Monrovia from Huntington Drive back towards Fair Oaks.
Travel locals save big at San Bernardino International Airport. Whether it's a stay on the bay or a visit to Utah's peaks, we've got you covered. With $5 a day parking, your next adventure starts here. Plan now at flysbd.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers have put up some impressive numbers during their 7-1 postseason. In the last 3 playoff games, the Dodgers have trailed for just 1 inning In the two games at Milwaukee, the Brewers had only 2 base runners in scoring position. Both of those were in Game 1. Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Blake Snell combined for 16 shutout innings, 17 strikeouts, and 1 walk in the 2 games at Milwaukee. The Brewers have only 4 hits in the 2 games. Can the Dodgers starting pitchers keep this up? We'll find out tomorrow. Tyler Glasnow gets the start for Game 3. First pitch tomorrow at 3 o'clock. LA native Russell Westbrook is returning for his 18th NBA season. Westbrook signed a 1-year deal with the Sacramento Kings for the veteran minimum of $3.6 million. Westbrook will be 37 in November. He holds the NBA record for the most triple plays with 203. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on.
Here come the drums. At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah,
gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need.
Hey. I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in a National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4th. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to building a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and really delighted to be in conversation with Jim Manja. He is the president and CEO of St. John's Community Health, and also Darren Harris, the Chief Government and Community Affairs Officer for St. John's Community Health. We've been talking quite a bit about the government shutdown and its implications for folks who rely on Medicaid and California Medi-Cal as a lifeline. One thing I'm clear on, based on the first part of our conversation, is that things may get a whole lot worse before they get better, and so brace yourself. But, you know, this is also on the show why we talk about the importance of organizing. In fact, we end every show saying, do what you can from where you are with what you have, but by all means, do something. right? And we're doing something on October 25th. It's the Left Coast Forum. It's happening at LA Trade Tech. And St. John's Community Health is a proud partner in helping to put that on. Talk to us about why it was important for you, Jim, for St. John's Community Health to be such a big partner in the Left Coast Forum.
Well, I think for us, it was very important to continue to stay aligned in support of BLA, because I think the station is kind of leading the way in many ways in the media and just in the streets on how to push back. And so we just felt like, given the population that we serve, given the patients that we represent and are so honored to care for, that it was critical that we participated in this and shared our experience and learned from others' experiences. I think, we're very excited to share that we're looking at running a county ballot measure that would raise revenue to restore all of the cuts coming to Los Angeles County from the Trump administration and the Newsom administration. It would save hundreds of thousands of people from losing their health coverage, and it would refund all of those federal grants, Black maternal health, transgender health, homeless health care, immigrant health services that have been cut. And so we are eager to engage in that conversation at the forum and share what we want to do and combine and coalesce with others to build something bigger.
Building something bigger, Darren, you're no stranger to building something bigger. A lot of people, for people who don't know, who are hiding under a rock, you're a son of South Los Angeles. You worked for former Congress member, now mayor of LA, Karen Bass, for many years. Talk to us about why you're putting your faith in coalition building in this moment. I happen to think to me, it appears to be a drought of radical imagination among organizers on the front lines. But I suspect that may be part of the reason why y'all said, you know what, we need a Left Coast Forum. We need to come together. Talk to us about why you're still putting your faith in coalition building, even when it feels like the coalitions are fraying right before our very eyes.
Right. And so, that's one of the things that really attracted me to St. John's is, radical imagination. Right now we're organizing our patients, who are at risk of losing their health care. Our staff are jumping at the opportunity to get engaged, in this fight. And St. John's as an organization has, stood up to the federal administration when it came to attacks on some of our grants that were being threatened. And so this being from South Los Angeles, I just believe that coalitions are the new safety net. And so I've seen this work through participatory democracy, through the Empowerment Congress, and seen it through media, outlets like, KBLA, and to where we know that we built this coalition. If we get people engaged in this campaign, we know that they will do the right thing, because Los Angeles always stands up and does the right thing. And we have seen, countless times that when DC fails, California is there to lead.
Well, so Jim, what can we expect? What can we expect at this Left Coast Forum? We know that St. John's really believes a lot in the power of local solutions, particularly when you can't rely on DC. What can we expect in your participation in the Left Coast Forum?
Well, I think what we hope our participation brings to the fore is the importance of healthcare in the struggle, and the fact that we must demand that our communities have access to health and healthcare services so that they can participate more in the democratic process. And so I think what we want to urge and what we hope to contribute is that healthcare is a fundamental human right, that healthcare is a fundamental issue that can galvanize the communities in South LA and beyond, and that we need to coalesce with, we need to break down the silos so that we can continue to build coalition and impact on all of the things that are being cut.
And speaking of breaking down the silos, we know that there's so much promise in terms of the kind of healthcare, the kind of public safety, the kind of world that we want to live in, which is on the other side of organizing for the world that we want to live in. Darren, I want to give you a chance to talk about some of the work that St. John's has done and intends to do in the coming weeks related to the Yes on 50 campaign. All eyes are on California right now. And Yes on the Proposition 50 campaign is what some people see as very necessary in terms of protecting and preserving our democracy. Talk to us about the role that St. John's intends to play on the Proposition 50 campaign.
Well, right now, as we speak, our community health workers are in the community, providing the pros and cons to voters on Prop 50. And really engaging in real conversations, at a community level, canvassing door to door, hosting house meetings, and also, making meetings with different organizations who are afraid to engage, in Prop 50, because we know that, again, DC is just not working the way it is intended to work. Congress has, forgot what their role is. And we see that we have a president who's just trying to steal power, and so we're just, making a noise to say, stop the siege, to where we can have a fair and balanced conversation in Washington, DC. And so we're doing that, door by door, block by block, and community by community here at St. John's.
Jim, you are no stranger to the struggle. You have been engaged in this work for decades. I just want to tap into your not just institutional knowledge, but your historical knowledge. Talk to us about how, as president and CEO of St. John's Community Health, in what ways is this moment very similar to experiences that you've had under the leadership of different presidents, different governors, and in what ways is this experience radically different? Tell us something that we haven't heard. Tell us something that we don't know or that hasn't broken through the news cycle.
Wow, that's a really difficult question, but a really good one. I think, I was a young man in my early 20s in the 1980s when the AIDS pandemic hit in full force. And, it's what politicized me as I watched, friends and loved ones pass away from AIDS and complete indifference on the part of government to do anything about it. And I was working at the AIDS project of the East Bay in Oakland in 1992, and I saw firsthand health disparities because the experimental treatments that were coming into San Francisco, we literally couldn't get them across the bridge into Oakland. And the primarily Black, gay, and bisexual men who we were serving, who had HIV, were dying at much higher rates. And I became determined to fight for health equity. And I think what we're seeing now, so then it was indifference, now it's absolute malevolence. It's actual hate that is coming and emanating from the White House and from the halls of Congress against all of the communities who built this country and contribute to the fabric of what makes America great. And so I think we have a lot of lessons, obviously, from organizing, that we've done through the civil rights struggles, through the AIDS fights, through the immigration struggles. But I think we're in a new era, and I think we need to adopt new strategies and build new coalitions because we're up against a much more formidable, organized, and hateful enemy at this point.
Wow. Well, we appreciate that sobering take, that sobering analysis all the more reason for folks to turn up and turn out at the Left Coast Forum taking place at LA Trade Tech on October 25th. Be there or be square. Our thanks to the team over at St. John's Community Health. Y'all are punching above your weight class there. And we are a stronger coalition and a stronger community because of it. Our thanks to Jim Manja, the president and CEO of St. John's Community Health, and Darren Harris, the Chief Community and Government Affairs Officer. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Open enrollment is your opportunity to choose a plan that connects you to Providence's comprehensive healthcare network. Choose a plan that includes Providence and gain access to a dedicated team of highly trained primary care physicians and specialists. From nationally recognized doctors and hospitals, Providence ensures quality care is always within reach. When you choose Providence, you choose after-hours care through our nurse advice line, urgent care, or virtual express care. You choose 24/7 access through the Providence mobile app to message providers, request prescription refills, schedule appointments, check lab results, and more. This open enrollment, prioritize your well-being with the peace of mind that comes from choosing a provider that values excellence and compassionate care. Don't just choose a plan dedicated to health equity and community engagement. Choose a plan that believes health is a human right. Choose a plan that delivers exceptional care and cares about your community. Choose a plan that offers Providence. Visit chooseprovidence.org to learn more. Protect yourself from Medicare card scams. Scammers may call, email, or even knock on your door claiming they need your Medicare info, asking for money or threatening to cancel your benefits. Don't fall for it. It's a scam. Remember, Medicare doesn't need to verify your information. They already have it. Medicare won't charge you for a new card and will never threaten to cancel benefits. Check your Medicare statements for suspicious charges and report scams to the California Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-855-613-7080. We're here to help.
They say the hardest part of getting something done is getting started. Well, we did that 30 years ago, when California first took on the tobacco industry. Now, smoking is down 60%, lung cancer 52%. These have already ended tobacco sales. A California without big tobacco isn't just possible, it's already happening. See our progress at undo.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. Before we get to the quiet part out loud, I just want to note that ABC News is reporting that the man suspected of starting the Palisades fire has been indicted and faces 45 years in prison. The man accused of starting the fire that eventually became the deadly blaze that devastated the Palisades area of Los Angeles earlier this year has been indicted by a federal grand jury. This was announced a short while ago by the Justice Department. Jonathan Rendernecht, I think I pronounced that right, Rendernecht, 29, was charged in a 3-count indictment with 1 count of destruction of property by means of fire, 1 count of arson, affecting property used in interstate commerce, and 1 count of timber set afire. Again, he faces 45 years in federal prison. It's also worth noting that he's a former LA resident living in Florida. He was arrested on October 7th, several months after the Palisades fire leveled neighborhoods in LA County and left 12 people dead. Now on to the quiet part out loud. I want to share with you as much as we can from what will go down in history as a very consequential oral argument before the U.S. Supreme Court. Janae Nelson, who leads the Legal Defense Fund, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, arguing for a second majority Black district in Louisiana. The stakes couldn't be higher for voting rights in this country. Take a listen to what Janae argued earlier today before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Congress included a durational limit in Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. It created a mechanism for reauthorization. It decidedly did not do that in Section 2.
The issue, as you know, is that this court's cases in a variety of contexts have said that race-based remedies are permissible for a period of time, sometimes for a long period of time, decades in some cases, but that they should not be indefinite and should have an endpoint. And what exactly do you think the endpoint should be, or how would we know for the intentional use of race to create districts?
Well, Justice Kavanaugh, you raised a very important distinction, and that's between remedies and the statute. So a race-based remedy can and should and usually does have a time limit and a durational limit. Section 2 court-ordered remedies have a time limit. And so that is something that is grounded in our case law. What is not grounded in case law is the idea that an entire statute should somehow dissolve simply because race may be an element of the remedy. So for example, this case has affirmed Title VII. It has affirmed Section 1982, the Family Medical Leave Act, and also Section 4E of the Voting Rights Act in Katzenbach versus Morgan, and never has it suggested that any of those statutes should dissolve in and of themselves as opposed to the remedy.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think it's the statute. It's the particular application of the statute that entails the intentional, deliberate use of race to sort people into different districts. That particular aspect, I'm guessing, I'm asking what you think the time limit on that should be, or there really shouldn't be a time limit. I think you might be saying there shouldn't be a time limit unless Congress chooses one.
I am saying that. I'm saying there should not be a time limit, but I also think it's critical to emphasize that Section 2 does not require a race-based remedy in all circumstances.
Is that because, can I ask, is that, I just wanted to follow up on Justice Kavanaugh's question. What if this is an exercise of Congress's enforcement power? If we're looking at the City of Bernie test and we're saying it has to be congruent and proportional, would that affect your answer to Justice Kavanaugh's question, that if it's going above and beyond what the 15th Amendment requires of its own force, but Congress has actually chosen the Voting Rights Act as a remedy, does that affect the question of whether it can go on indefinitely or not, that at some point it becomes not congruent and proportional?
No, I don't think it does. First, Bernie should not apply to Section 2.
Just assuming
that it
my
does.
question is.
Sure, assuming that it does. As you know, in Bernie, this court held up the Voting Rights Act as the paradigmatic example of congruence and proportionality. The fact that the Voting Rights Act at times may require a race-based remedy does not change the fact that Congress, with its enlarged powers as defined by Ex parte Virginia and the line of cases forward, can address conduct that is beyond what the 15th Amendment addresses. It doesn't need to simply parrot the 15th Amendment. It can address conduct that is even considered constitutional in order to ensure that race discrimination in voting does not go undetected, uncorrected, or undeterred, in the words of the Senate report supporting the 1982
I guess I wonder if it would be helpful, at least as I'm thinking about it, because I think this is a very important question. To understand, I think that you're saying that Section 2 is not a remedy in and of itself. It is the mechanism by which the law determines whether a remedy is necessary.
That's absolutely correct.
So it's a law that is just encouraging or requiring a check-in. It's like a tool. It's like a tape measure that we're looking as to whether or not certain circumstances exist. And those circumstances that Congress is worried about is unequal access to electoral opportunity. And Section 2 tells you we have to look for those circumstances, and then the court says, yep, they exist in this situation under Section 2, and so now a remedy is required. And in our case law, we then say, okay, state, it's up to you to figure out what that remedy will be, and maybe that remedy involves race consciousness, maybe it doesn't, whatever, but Section 2 itself is just the measure by which we determine that a remedy is required.
That's absolutely correct.
And so that's why it doesn't need a time limit, because it's not doing any work other than just pointing us to the direction of where we might need to do something.
That's right. And its usage becomes less and less as we see racially polarized voting and residential segregation decreasing. The Katz amicus brief in this case shows that in the past decade.
So you are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We were just listening to the Supreme Court oral arguments by Janae Nelson, who leads the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. She is arguing for a second majority Black district in Louisiana. This is a case that's being closely watched because the very power, at least what's left of the Voting Rights Act, is at stake here. We heard her going back and forth with a number of justices, including Justice Kavanaugh, where she made very clear, in her view at least, the distinction between remedy versus statute. Remedy being time limited, but statute, on the statute question, she's saying that the entire statute shouldn't dissolve if race may be a part of the remedy. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson putting a finer point on it, saying that Section 2 is not a remedy itself. So that's Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. It's not a remedy itself. It's a mechanism by which the law determines the remedy. Section 2 says we have to look and see if folks are being discriminated against. And if the court says, if there is a remedy or if there's not a remedy required, and the state develops that remedy. And so, again, we're going to continue to keep our eye very close on this. But when we come forward in our next hour, you don't want to miss my conversation with a leading candidate for governor in South Carolina and Macy Gray. How's that for a dynamic duo? You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. The Senate will vote again on a plan to end the government shutdown. The GOP-backed measure failed for the 8th time Tuesday. Black House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is urging an end to the shutdown while President Trump plans cuts to Democrat-backed programs.
It's time to reopen the government. It's time to enact a